Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about something completely different.
Completely different. Well, maybe not totally completely different.
So what are we talking about?
We're talking about, miniature games other than Warhammer 40K.
Miniature games other than Warhammer 40K. And I've actually played one of them on the list.
So there you go. I played a couple of them, and they're all pretty interesting and not 40K.
So to start with, Warhammer 40K is a very big
Miniature
game.
It's
And
huge.
okay, by big, I mean there's a lot of pieces. By what Saul's saying, huge, I think he means that a lot of people play it.
Well, it's like D&D, right? It's probably the most played miniature game there is.
And since D&D was evolved from Miniature Wargames, right, it only makes sense that a lot of people would like to play miniature games. And Warhammer 40K is kind of like the original miniature games, right, where it's except with fantasy elements in it, because it's got your armies and
Warhammer 40K comes from Warhammer, right? Which back, I don't know, in the 80s, I'm not sure how far back Warhammer actually goes, the fantasy game, but there was also a fantasy war game or miniature game where you painted all your miniatures and you had armies and fought each other. And then Warhammer 40K, which is
the size of the figures, right? 40K?
no, 40K is the year.
Oh, see, I was always confused by that. I knew it was the year, but for some reason I think it should be the size of the figure.
That's why it's science fiction, because it's for Warhammer 40,000 years. In the timeline, and it's what you have is you have the same kinds of elements. You have the rat people, the orcs, and all that, but now that you're in space.
They have dwarves too, right?
Dwarves, elves, yeah, they call them Eldar in Warhammer.
Well, as a historian, Saul and I have seen the Roman, and even before that, Greek, the plans that they had. Like if you read Thucydides, he'll tell you all the plans for a battle to get ready, right? And then you see, if you go to the gaming store, we used to have a gaming store next to us. Do you remember what it was called?
D&J Hobby?
D&J Hobby, yes. And I used to go there when I was 20-ish. 22. And I would look at all the miniatures and I was going, these are pretty cool. But miniatures involve a lot of stuff, right?
And that's the thing with Warhammer 40K. It's like you can have quite a few miniatures on a table at a time, and there's all kinds of rules as how you paint them and all that stuff. So there's a lot involved in Warhammer 40K, and it's owned by a very, what is it? Is it Games Workshop?
I believe so.
Yeah, Games Workshop, and they're very
territorial.
Yes, they know they have the market cornered on that stuff, and so their models are kind of pricey, and I can almost imagine why it'd be pricey if they were metal, but now they switched to plastic. So I don't understand.
That was so they don't poison you.
No, they used to make them out of
pewter
or something like that was non-lead. I know I played with lead figures back in the day, so hopefully I don't have to
have any side effects.
Yeah.
Well, what I meant by that you have lots of armies and stuff, and the reference to ancient warfare is that all throughout history, you've seen that scene in movies where generals are looking at a board. They're like standing around a table, and they have the little armies placed out there, and that is the way that people come up with strategies. Right? This is what we're going to do. We're going to take this hill. We're going to do this. So
I should say
wargaming comes from
kind of like that
from actual history, right? And if you ever go to a convention and you go to the wargaming room, or I hear, I've never been, but I hear that there are chapters of miniature players throughout the United States and the world that still set up there. Some of them might be a little bit older now, and I don't believe I don't think it's going to die, but it might when they go, because I don't think there's a lot of young people into it. Although I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, please let me know, because I'd like to meet these young people that play war games.
Well, Warhammer 40K they play, but you're talking about like
I'm talking about the
Napoleonics and
Yeah.
that stuff. A lot of that stuff is very popular with what now is an older
generation
section of
of gamers.
of gamers. And if you go to there's a convention here in the Bay Area. It's called Pacificon, and one of the big attractions or somebody that puts on a part of the show is they bring in people called the Valley Gamers Association or something like that, and they play miniature games. That's all they do, and they set up these large tables of Napoleonics, naval battle miniature games, and they're pretty cool. These games, so Pacificon brings in this group, and they're a big part of the convention, and they hold a large room, or they occupy a large room, and they
play all weekend.
Right, that's a big attraction.
And it's amazing to watch these guys with their boxes and boxes and they have little dollies, the rolling dollies that not the ones that are stand up, but they're like, so they can pack their boxes on it, and they have all kinds of accoutrements that go with
terrain
stuff.
too, right?
Terrain.
They're just not playing on top of a wooden table, or not even on a neoprene mat that's colored. They have terrain. They have people. They set up fences, trees. Some people put in sand, and I mean it's a big production.
And it takes a long time to play those games, which is probably why I look at them, and I've talked to some of them, and I'll go, "Hey, is that the Roman army?" And then they'll tell you exactly what they're playing and what battle it is and all that. So Warhammer 40K falls into that category only because how long do you think it takes to play a Warhammer 40K game?
Well, that's why I think Warhammer 40K became so popular in the miniatures arena, because it usually takes only like 90 minutes. And you play on a small, I think it's a 3 foot by 3 foot square.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a ton of miniatures, but there's still quite a few miniatures. And they can set up a tournament, and usually you can play a game in an hour to 90 minutes. And for a miniature game, that's pretty short.
Fast. That's a lot. Very fast compared to those miniature games that they set up in the morning and they play for like 5 or 6 hours.
Well, I think most miniatures takes at least 3 hours to play. Those kind of big, huge army tactics and stuff like that.
Do you think that's the 3 hours involved in? Is the setup
playing?
See, so that's why it takes 5 to 6 hours.
And there's a setup too.
And the takedown.
Well, we don't count that. But that's why I think 40K became so popular, because you could have tournaments and have a lot of games. And you could do a tournament on over a weekend or even one whole day, and you could have a grand prize winner, and you play like a standard tournament where everybody plays, or not everybody plays each other. You play each other.
You get into a pool.
And you get eliminated.
You can get eliminated,
Yeah, like the playoffs or something like that. So I think that's why Warhammer 40K is really popular, because people like miniatures, but they don't like the time it takes to play.
And some of the miniatures, Ian, our friend, our kid's friend, our
friend's kid.
Sorry, he's not a kid anymore. But I've seen some of the miniatures. Some of his friends are into Warhammer 40K, and he goes, "I got to get an army together." And so we got these.
He doesn't play. He just likes painting them.
I know.
That's weird.
But he has a bunch of little armies.
Oh yeah.
Now. And he got some of these really cool miniatures.
Yeah.
And then he loves to paint miniatures, so he painted them, and they look pretty cool. But it's a big process involved, and that's one of the things about miniature games. All of these miniature games that aren't Warhammer 40K that we're going to start talking about now. I thought you were talking about something else. They all have miniatures. Most miniatures nowadays are plastic, right?
Yes.
Or resin.
Plastic.
Okay.
Well, there's different types of plastic. I'm not going to get into that. But I think another reason why people like Warhammer 40K, because now I don't play that, but it's because they say the miniatures are really nice looking. That they don't put out really crappy miniatures in a sense of how they look, right?
Right.
What do you call it? The amount of detail that they have is pretty astounding. So that is what you're going to get less of when you play different or other games other than Warhammer 40K. And might be a reason why those miniatures are so expensive.
Yes, because there's this place, even for just us for playing D&D, there's a place online where you can order miniatures and you can create your own miniature. Do you remember what
Oh,
that
yeah,
place
it's
is called?
I don't know, but it's very popular.
It's really cool because you can go in and you can make your person and you can dress it the way you want.
And have different clothes
Different
and
clothes, different.
poses.
Yeah. And it's very cool. And those are kind of expensive because they're individually created, right?
Yeah, but now you can buy the STL files and
And do them yourself if
And
you have
print 'em
if you have a
yourself.
3D printer.
Yeah.
No, you cannot get a 3D printer.
I really want one.
I know, but you don't need to because Kathy got one for her birthday.
Yeah, but having them make my figures my stuff is not as fun. So Warhammer 40K is probably the most popular war game out there for a number of factors. The ease of play, the rules are kind of easy, though they keep changing them all the time. The army list is kind of like the same. They always have the same Eldar, Dark Eldar, the orcs, dwarves, all the kinds of stuff. And it's very popular, and there's even stores that just sell Warhammer stuff. They have Warhammer stores.
Well, we went to Game Castle yesterday,
Yes.
and half of the store is Warhammer.
Yes, because it makes a lot of money.
Because it makes a lot of money.
It's kind of like Magic the Gathering as far as making money for a game store.
Yeah.
So what game isn't Warhammer 40K, and why are we talking about them? Usually there's all kinds of different factors, and the first one we want to talk about is...
How about if we talk about the Walking Dead one?
Yes. Now, this one I don't know too much about. I didn't even know it existed until we started looking into miniatures. And, of course, there's going to be a Walking Dead.
It's called Walking Dead, The Walking Dead All Out War.
All Out War.
And it's not going to be cheap. So if you want to get away from Warhammer 40K and go cheap, this is not the one to do.
Well, I don't think the thing about Warhammer 40K is that there's a ton of different armies you can buy.
Right.
And I think The Walking Dead, I don't think that exists. It's just like
No, but it's
a box set.
The box set is like around, I'm going to say $120 to $150.
Wow. That's kind of pricey. But
it has everything in it.
But if you were
if you're into The Walking Dead, and when I looked up this online, I put in The Walking Dead miniature game, and all these things came up. There's a bus, and I don't know. I'm not a Walking Dead person, so I don't know these things. But there were like not only the original set, but they had all kinds of things that goes with it.
Oh, see, I don't know very
like
much about
terrain stuff, a bus, and all kinds of stuff.
Well, one thing is that I'm not a fan of The Walking Dead. I saw the first season. Hey, at least I saw it.
I didn't even see that. Dude.
I saw the first season. I could say I saw the first season, and for me, that was enough.
I don't need realistic zombie things. I've seen Left 4 Dead on the computer enough that I'm like, whatever.
Well, anyway, so I've seen the show, and I liked the show. It was just it was unsettling, and as a good show, that type would probably make you feel. And so I was not looking out for it. I did see the Walking Dead RPG, which I almost kickstarted, but then I go, am I really going to?
Am I going to want to play that? No.
Yeah. I looked it up, and there's a box set, and now there's an expansion box set, and so supposedly everything you need is in the box. There is it's like a survival game, so it is basically you versus the zombies, you trying to sneak past the zombies, not trying to make noise, and get stuff to salvage to be able to survive. And
the miniatures, one of the things, because it's an IP, right? The miniatures are recognizable to you if you are into this particular show. Yeah, because it's based on the TV show. Yeah, which is also based on a comic. One of the reviews I saw said that if you like this, you'll really enjoy this game for a miniature game because it takes about 30 to 120 minutes, and you will recognize all of the figures in the box. Right. And so that'll be any intellectual property game like that. And there's a couple more on here that we have. One is Star Wars, and one is the Game of Thrones one, that both have miniature games. So anytime you go with the IP that you like, you're going to enjoy it because you like it, right? Right. There's something that attracts you to that IP. So is there anything else you want to tell them about the Walking Dead game? Well, I think it's a game for people who like the show, right?
and want to relive the show in a certain sense. I think it's pretty neat that they use the characters. Of course, you would want to do that have the miniatures of those characters. And 120 minutes is not a long play time, and it looks like it doesn't need a lot of setup, which is also very helpful for people who are not into miniatures that much, or they're not miniature war gamers, right? So I think that's another thing is some of these games appeal to people who are not in the hobby already, so they might want to try it out.
Right.
And I think this is a decent one that if you like the IP, then I think it's a no-brainer. The cost might be a little bit prohibitive, but
if there's someone like our friend Mike, his brother Tom is really into The Walking Dead.
right.
So when I was reviewing, I'm all, Tom would like this just because of the figures, even if he never played the game.
Yeah, and I think he read the graphic novels, or he has it, and he's all in on things.
Yeah, him and his daughter.
His daughter, right?
Yeah. So the next one that one of the other IP ones is A Song of Ice and Fire. That's the Game of Thrones ones.
Right.
And the most interesting thing I thought about this one, or when we were researching it, was that it has a lot of armies in it in the box. A lot of different. So it's in like a tray. I guess
you put them in trays.
You put them in trays, and then you take them out as the regiment gets slaughtered. It goes out, right?
Yeah, it makes them weaker. So it all depends on how many people
you have in your tray.
How many individual models you have on this tray, and you move the whole tray as a unit, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't move individual figures around on the board. You move this tray that holds a bunch of miniatures, and you even move and you turn and you do all kinds of things. It's really popular. One of the really popular games because they usually have tournaments here at the local game stores.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, so for this one and the Walking Dead one, are the rules you roll with dice? Because I know one of these you use cards.
Yes, these are all dice games.
So basically your army is going to you're going to roll probably, I don't know what.
I think most of them use D6s.
D6s.
I'm not sure about the Walking Dead one. I didn't see how.
But you're going to roll your dice and you either hit the number or you don't. So that determines whether you're successful or not, right? As you're moving your guys around.
Right. Usually you roll to hit, or you roll
to defend,
or you roll for morale and all kinds of things like that, depending on how bad your unit gets decimated. I think, again, with an IP, like you said, this is probably really popular for people who like Game of Thrones. They have characters from the movie,
yes,
and i.e. the books.
And also, this one is probably the easiest one this is from the reviews that I read. It'll be the one like Ticket to Ride is the gateway game to gaming, right? Or Settlers of Catan, right? This one, when I was reading it, I'm all, this would be the game. If you like a lot of people really like the IP, have watched all the shows. I've only watched one of them. And that may...
You mean one episode?
One episode so far. But that's okay. I also read 5 chapters out of the first book and told Saul, I don't like this style of writing. So, which he rolls his eyes at me.
Yeah, I know.
But I can see the appeal of it. And if it says it's one of the easier ones, so it's more like playing a board game from the rules set. Because some of these rules can be very time consuming to learn.
Right, especially if you're talking about individual units, you're talking about there's line of sight, there's range, there's all kinds of things that take place or are considered in a war game. So this one is, you're right, it's straightforward. You move in these large, and there's different size trays depending on what kind of characters. And then they have single characters, like hero characters that have special abilities that will help you fight better or be able to do special things.
You can pick a faction, basically.
And you pick a faction, and of course, that's the starter set is Lannisters versus Starks.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of expansion boxes that you can add for your figures, and these figures, they look like they're from the show, and so you have an idea of how to paint them. Right.
Oh, and the figures they come as, it's just a raw plastic, not raw. It's a plastic figure, right?
Yes.
So then you're going to want to paint it, or if you're like me, you're going to go, well, do we have to paint it? Can't we just play with it the way it is?
Well, we didn't mention that as part as for Warhammer 40K. Usually, and this translates to almost any other miniature game. If you play it anywhere, like
At a tournament,
not
or
at
a
home,
store,
not at home,
not at home.
they want your figures painted.
And they have Warhammer 40K has specific
Right, there's guidelines.
colors and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Though I'm not sure if they'll bar you from entering a tournament if you're not painted right, but surely they don't like half painted figures or really badly painted figures.
So
they'll
Saul's
let you play.
figures may not make it.
Not my paint jobs. So that's another factor about this hobby. This part of the hobby is that not only do you want to play the game, but you have to want to be able to. You have to be able to paint figures,
Or pay someone to do it for you.
and that's extremely expensive.
Or find some teenagers that like to paint.
Yeah,
And-
well, even that can be pricey, but there you go.
So,
Ice of Fire, I think, is like you said, is somebody who likes Game of Thrones, who is kind of new to miniature gaming, and the starter box set is the large box. It has a lot of figures in it. It's pretty neat.
so that's the other thing. These boxes, unless some of them maybe not, but most of the times you got to buy a box with the army in it.
Right. They usually give you a
They
starter
usually
set.
give you a starter set. Yeah.
There's a starter set somewhere.
So there's one more IP one that I think we should mention because it's a pretty big one, Star Wars, and it has 3 different. They have the Armada fleet.
Yeah, that's like big capital ships.
They have the Legion one, which is fighting on the ground,
Right.
and then they have X-wings, which is
X-Wing,
dueling
which is-
in space.
Well, yeah, it's
or-
kind of like a fighter combat.
Yeah. So there's 3 of them. They use their own dice, their special Star Wars dice,
Yep.
which I think they're 8-sided or something.
I'm not sure. I think they used all the polyhedral.
All of them, yeah. And they have special symbols on them and stuff. So
Correct.
So if you're into any Star Wars, and I didn't look up how long that one was, but I'm assuming it's probably between an hour and 2 hours.
Yeah, most miniatures probably take that long. And the thing with Star Wars miniatures, any of them, is that they're very pricey.
Because it's Star Wars.
Now I don't know about Legion, but like Star Wars X-Wing, they come pre-painted. The
see,
little painted.
now that would be worth it to me.
And now when you play, there's templates, and I almost got into Star Wars.
Miniatures,
What was it called? X-Wing.
X-wing.
And because it looks really cool, right? You buy the different miniatures, which can be pricey, and then I thought it was pretty interesting. You just put a template down, and that tells you how you can bank and how you can turn and all this other stuff. I've never actually played a single game of X-Wing. And Legion, I know even less about because a lot of people, I haven't seen it being played as often or as much. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a really pricey. Each figure is going to cost you a lot of money because they got to pay the licensing fee somewhere down the road.
I think that you like the X-wing one because you play that airplane game with the little miniatures at the convention.
Right, the World War One aerodrome is one.
Yeah.
And
Those are more math kind of games, right? Where you're on a grid and your airplane is shooting at other airplanes and trying to get away from other airplanes and stuff.
It wasn't Matthew. It was actually that guy. I think he made up his own rules. It's based on some other flying war game, which is probably very complicated. And he really not dumbed it down, but made it super easy to play. And it was really fun. And he had these big old models and stuff like that. There was another one called I forget what it was, like a World War II. No, same thing. A World War One fighting game, combat game. But anyway, same idea with the Star Wars miniature. You buy the miniature, and it's all pre-assembled, all pre-colored.
And now I'd like to talk about the one game that I have played, Gaslands, because you talked about templates, and Gaslands uses templates.
Yes, it does.
And Gaslands is really cool, and we have done a podcast about Gaslands.
I think we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because we went and played at a gaming store in Mountain View, and the people were really nice. And then we've seen them all the time now at all the conventions because they're local. So it's always interesting too. And it was a really cool. And Gaslands is about cars, and Matchbox cars is what people buy, and
Or Hot Wheels,
right?
Yeah.
And then they fix them up, to look like
A little post-apocalyptic, a little bit futuristic, a little Mad Max, a little what is it? Death Race 2000. That was a movie back in the 80s.
And Augustine and Ian had a blast when we went and played with these people because it was amazing to them, right? Because they let them use cars. We didn't have to bring our own cars. They had cars available, and the guy was really cool. And it was a lot of fun. And the templates were very interesting because you have to choose which way you're going to go, right? And you don't want to. You choose before you go.
Right. You choose. There's all kinds of. Of course, there's rules to the game, and a lot of it has to do. There's this thing called a gear, and your gear tells you how far you get to move.
Right.
Gear 1 through 6, I believe, and the higher the gear, the farther you can move. And it's usually a race, like theoretically, and you're trying to get through these gates, like in a race.
Yeah.
And the gates can be anywhere on this large, not even a large, it's about the size of a tabletop.
Yeah, a tabletop.
And you're moving, and you use these templates, and basically you put the template down, and you move the car over the template. It tells you which, how far you go and which direction you go, left or right, like if you're turning and all kinds of things.
Now, this would be simple if you were by yourself on this track, but there are other cars.
Yeah,
and everybody has their own way that they're going, right? So sometimes you run into people.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a strategy. Sometimes you didn't mean to do it, right?
Yeah, there's pushing and a lot of times the people do it on purpose. Like if you're next to a wall, you get pushed into the wall. Of course, you can get damaged and set on fire and explode. So it's a really cool game. Unlike any other game on this list, there's hardly a cost to playing it.
The only cost is, and on Facebook or anywhere online, you can find groups of Gasland people, and these guys,
yes,
they will show you pictures of Hot Wheels that they have bought that were on sale somewhere, right? That they found, and then they take them and they tweak them out, make them all cool looking. And
what's funny is that I did the same thing, right? I bought a bunch of one. I already had a few of them for my son, but I go, but I don't want to touch his cars. And so I went and bought some Hot Wheels, and you could buy a pack of 10 for like $6.99 if you get them on sale. Like right now, you go to any. We live in an area where there's Safeways, and the single car packs are always on sale. It seems like for like $4 for $5. So you can literally get 4 cars for $5, and you can get different size cars. And now they have rules for buses and trucks and large trucks. And so what happens is the cost of entry is really cheap. So what I did, and I'm pretty cheap anyway, is I got a bunch of cars. I just spray painted over them. I didn't even take off the paint. I just put a primer on them, and then I threw some weird colors paint on them. Some look rusty, and some are just gray and worn out looking. A good thing to glue the tires, because if you let them roll, they may free roll on the board, which you don't want them to do. Other than that, there's hardly anything you need to do. I did buy some bits of like guns and like glue them onto the car, and then I painted them. So they look pretty decent.
Yeah.
But
these guys are like,
on the Facebook group, I've seen them like literally, it's like they tear apart the car.
And they put it back together. And the other thing about this game is there's terrain, because it's a course, right? So someone has taken the time to lay out the terrain and make the course, right?
They
have little like this. There's a little gas station, or a tank that can explode. There's fences and all kinds of and
barriers and gates and stuff.
Yeah.
And what the funny thing is that these people who have designed or show you how to make the terrain, they make terrain out of everyday household objects like old cans, old coffee cans, old.
And since it's post-apocalyptic, it doesn't have to be painted. I mean, it's painted, right, and it's done really coolly, but it doesn't have to look like
pristine
bright colors or pristine, because it's supposed to be dirty and
usually is.
Yeah.
And you get to shoot at other people, which is really fun.
So if you ever want to get someone into a miniature game, this would be the one I would suggest, because one, most people like cars, and it's pretty cool to be in a race. So and the templates are pretty cool because you don't have to, it tells you, it calculates it for you by the template, right? How you're going to go.
Yep.
So that would be one of the ones that I would think would be really
Another
cool.
thing is that you get to design your car, so you basically build your car, put the weapons you want on it, and of course they have different ranges. Some shoot really slow, like machine guns are really popular, but so are missiles and missile launchers and anti-tank guns and stuff. But there's space requirements and how much space it takes up, and all kinds of things. So we did that. We went. I met up with Bay because I talked about it online, and he goes, "Oh, I like that game." So I took my box of Hot Wheels that I had painted, went there to, it was DungeonCon, and me, Augustine, Bay, and Ian played just on a regular tabletop, and we were just thrashing each other and having a good time. It was fun, and there was no terrain, right? It was just like survival of the fittest, because usually that's what happens in the race. But it was a lot of fun. We were like driving around, turning and running into each other and shooting each other. It was a blast.
Yeah.
And I haven't played that game enough. But I had the first set of rules, the first edition. Now they have Gaslands Refueled, which he tightened up the rules. There's some things that people didn't like. He revised the rules and he added a bunch of stuff so you can add buses, semi trucks, and all kinds of things.
Not only that, but this is the only game. Well, there might be other ones here, but on Etsy, you can buy. People have gone and made the templates.
Oh, the templates.
And because the book that you do this from, it just has a page with the templates on it, and you make them yourself, right? So, but these people have made them out of plastic and
they make them out of
resin,
and then people have made the dice, because the dice are they're 6-sided dice, but they have words.
They change
on them.
the pips,
right?
Or they.
So it'll call, the dice will say slide and this and that, slide left, slide right, and all this thing, and a couple other words. But you can usually just look them up and say, oh, a 1 means slide and a 2 means this. But they actually make the dice that actually just say the words on there, so you don't even have to worry about that.
So that's really a cool one, I think. And then there's a couple others that we'll talk about. 2 others.
Sure.
Which ones?
I think I'll talk about Malifaux.
Okay.
Now, Malifaux is based on not an IP, but it has its own world. It's kind of like a steampunkish sort of magic world. And what is different about this is that it's very low miniature count, right? And instead of armies like Warhammer 40K or even Stark versus Lannister, you have a unit of 10. And they call this a skirmish miniature game because it's
small.
Because it's small. Every unit counts. Like if you lose one unit, you don't want to be. You're not going to be sacrificing a lot of miniatures.
You're not the general sacrificing the troops.
Yeah, there's no like normal troop. Every unit has like an ability or something that they're good at, and you play that style. It's you're a little bit more conservative or a little bit more worried about losing actual miniatures. Unlike games where you have 100 miniatures on the table, 1 miniature is not going to cost you unless it's a real important miniature or the goal.
Unless it's your last one, then.
Yeah. So because of the world, the miniatures are really kind of wacky and out there. So painting these figures can be a lot of fun because you can really express yourself any way you want, because there's ghosts, there's witches, there's anything you can think of. It's a weird, it's a weird world, and they spell it WYRD, weird. And I like the miniatures. In fact, I've bought those miniatures and used them for other games. Another weird aspect of this is that there's no dice.
They use cards.
Cards determine the randomizer.
Yes.
And what's funny is that this also extends into their role-playing game called Through the Breach, which is basically uses the same world. And because of that, they also use cards to determine initiative and to determine everything. How if you succeed in a skill or combat and all that stuff. So
And in that one, you have this. Everybody has the same card, the same number.
everybody has their own deck.
their own deck of
Yeah.
cards, right?
Yeah.
And they're all so. And there's not. It's not like the whole deck. It's like 9 or 12 cards because I remember you use them and then
It depends. Yeah, it depends on in the role playing game. It depends on your abilities and stuff like that.
yeah.
In the war game, kind of uses the same kind of technique where you build like a hand of cards, and you use those. You have a deck, and you use those to determine. It's the randomizer. Malifaux. It was really a really popular game. A lot of people I know when I was listening to Miniature Wargame podcast and looking at reviews, it was really popular. I don't know how popular it is now. I still see it being sold at the
Gaming store.
gaming store. In fact, they had a whole bunch of stuff there that I was buying because it's close to Thanksgiving, and they were having a sale on it. So a lot of that stuff was like 30% off. And one of the units, because they sell them usually by units or by big individual figures, and I almost bought one because they look pretty cool.
So that's the thing about miniatures. If they look cool, then you might buy them.
Yeah. So,
So-
that one's a pretty small play area too. That doesn't require a lot.
And it says it takes about 90 minutes. So that's
Right.
an hour and a half. And when I tell you the time that it takes these things, it doesn't mean that that's the playing time, right? That's not the setting up time. So this one
Yes.
doesn't have a lot of setup, right?
Right. It's not as much as other games, right?
Yeah. So if it's going to take you 90 minutes, you should allot at least 3 hours, right? Because 90 minutes for the game, time to set up, time to talk, time to put everything away. And
I would say this game probably takes like at the most half an hour to set up. At the
Okay.
most, where other miniatures will take like an hour if you're using a lot of scenery and stuff.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it says it takes 90 minutes, allow yourself
Okay.
an hour and a half
Yeah,
more
yeah,
to,
yeah. You're right. You're right.
I know I said we'd only talk about 2, but I really like the Dread Ball and,
Dread Ball, Guild Ball,
and Guild Ball.
I would even throw in
Blood Bowl.
Blood Bowl. Yes, yes. So Guild Ball is basically a soccer game,
Yes.
right? And it is, I think it's in the future. I'm pretty sure, or
No,
it's a fantasy.
Dread Ball is future.
You're right.
Guild Ball is more fantasy.
Fantasy. And Guild Ball is the one I had heard of because it's been around a while now, and basically you are guilds.
Yes.
Like team. They call them teams. Their teams are guilds, and you go around and fight other teams or
Yeah.
play other teams, and it's a little bloody and a little brutal. But the ultimate idea is to score points by shooting the goal
Right.
or hitting the target, and I think that's pretty neat set of rules. I have not played this one. I've seen it played. I've seen the miniatures. They're pretty neat. They're like, of course, they're
So
fantastic.
these are the ones where the miniatures are made with a plastic that is a little bit soft. So when on the reviews, I heard that some of the swords or stuff might be bent and stuff. Or
Yeah,
that could have been Dread Ball. One of them, so that's some of the, which goes back to Saul's. That's why Warhammer 40K is so expensive, because the miniatures are made really well. So some
Right.
miniatures are made better than others.
Yes, and
Easier to put together too.
They say that about Malifaux, that the miniatures, the plastic is not as high quality. I think that I do like the quality of Warhammer 40K miniatures, but I don't paint them. So, and if I were to paint them, it would be lost on me, the amount of detail, because I'm kind of just splash and
Splash
go.
and go.
And so I don't need that. And Malifaux figures, they look really cool, but they don't have a lot of detail. They're not as detailed as 440K. And depending on who makes it and where the plastic and what kind of plastic, the detail in the miniatures are kind of up and down. I think Guild Ball is a little bit better than Dread Ball, because Dread Ball is like a box set that you buy, and Guild Ball you buy the actual little
Guys, little guilds.
boxes of your team.
Yeah.
So
Well, and Dread Ball is a science fiction one.
Yes.
So a lot of the things are science fiction tropes, right? The miniatures.
Yes.
So
there's
so there's
sci-fi.
robots and all.
Where in Guild Ball it's more fantasy.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Blood Bowl, even though it's made by Games Workshop. Same people who make 40K, and it is a like football game. Blood Bowl.
Yes.
And you buy a box set, and of course you buy different teams. There's goblins, there's orcs, humans, Eldar, or I don't know if you can mix and match. I'm pretty sure you can, but depending on what the stats are, you field your team as with all these weird things, and you play football. There is one called something Blood Blitz, which is like a cheaper version of it. It's a box set. It used to be available at Barnes and Noble, which is a bookstore here in Northern California. I'm sure it used to be not worldwide. It used to be all across the United States, but they've been kind of closing them.
And Saul has Blood Bowl. Yeah, you do. No. The football one?
No, I don't have that one.
Are you sure?
I have the Blood Bowl box.
Oh, yes.
But in my Blood Bowl box, I have Man of War.
Oh, I thought that was something else. Okay.
Yes. I understand the confusion.
So he has the box. It's in the closet. I've never seen it come out. So
I've been thinking about selling it because, Man of War is another Games Workshop or whatever it's called.
It is Games Workshop.
It is Games Workshop production. But that's another big complaint about Games Workshop is that they put out these games and then they end them.
Oh.
They stop production and don't support them anymore. And Man of War...
It probably depends on how many people buy them, right?
Yeah. I agree. So I might be putting some boxes of Man of War stuff on eBay.
So there's one other one that we looked at, which was Infinity Corvus Belli. Belli. And that's a futuristic, 175...
years in the future.
Yeah.
Now, this one's really cool. Again, I like the idea behind it because it is a very small unit count.
Yes.
Or team count or side count, miniature count. And this one is really, the rules are really tight. I've seen it played. I've never played it, but I've been really anxious to play it. I have a ton of not a ton, but I have quite a few of their miniatures, only because the miniatures are really cool.
All of these are really rules heavy, except maybe Gaslands, which has a lot of rules in my opinion anyway, because there's a lot of different things you can do with your cards.
Not really a lot of rules, but yes.
There's a lot of minute detail involved in these. So
right.
It's not unless you're picking up the Game of Thrones one, which is more like a board game. And if you play board games, there are people that read the rules and there are people who don't want to read the rules. So you got to read the rules to know what you're doing.
Yes, you should read the rules if you're going to try.
And the Infinity one that we were just talking about, the futuristic one, is very rules heavy, I heard.
Rules heavy, but the rules are very well written.
Okay.
I've looked at the rule book several times, the previous version of the rule book. Now the rule book is now 2 books in one slip case. I haven't seen how much the rules are, but the rules section of that book, they're really well written. They have examples of what each rule. It has an example of what that rule looks like on the table. And so if you just play with the core rules, it's really easy. Of course, you can add on all these other, supplemental rules. And the thing about this game is that it's pretty brutal. You do not want to lose any units. It's really tactical, right? It has to do with line of sight. You're using the terrain to make sure that your character isn't seen, because if it's seen,
it's gonna get hit.
It's gonna get shot at, and it's the future, so the chances of unit surviving is not high, and unless the person rolling has terrible dice.
And it's a 20-sided dice.
Yeah, I really like the idea of 20-sided dice. Gives you a little bit more. What is it? Randomness.
20 chances.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on what the table and what you need to hit. But I really like it. It's really neat. It mimics the role playing game where you have to roll the way because
you're rolling to see if you're going to hit or not.
Yeah, and the D20s is a big deal. I really like this one. I almost got into it a few times, but again, what prevents me from getting to miniatures is storage of all these miniatures.
Because it takes space.
And painting of the miniatures.
Because that is a lot of work.
Yeah, so.
And old eyes now. he has. So we got all kinds of things you'd have to use to help him with that.
But it is a pretty neat, like I said, it's a smaller count of miniatures, smaller table. But people really like using a lot of terrain with this one because
of line of sight.
Because it's so important that if you could see a little bit of their shoulder, and then that they could be targeted.
So this is the one where they would bring in buildings and
Yes.
different kinds of things.
And like you could go like 2 stories
Yeah.
and trees, buildings, cars, all this kind of stuff.
So that's the most. So if you've ever wondered about miniature games and didn't want to invest a lot of money, or if you like one of the IPs, or I would say Gaslands is probably the easiest, or the Guild Ball or Dreadball, because those look like they're pretty simple.
Yes.
I'm not saying the rules are simple. I'm just saying they look simpler than some of the other ones.
Right. I agree.
So they might be the ones that, if you're interested in it and you like one of the IPs, although Star Wars would be kind of hard because I hear it has lots of rules. So,
And it has a lot of miniatures. That's the deal.
and it has its own dice, so you don't have to buy miniatures. You got to buy dice. I've played the Gaslands, was a very good experience for me, so I like that one. If you like one of the other IPs, especially like if you like The Walking Dead or something like that, this might be something you and your friends who enjoy that kind of stuff might like, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
If you've ever wanted to play a miniature game.
Right.
Because if you don't, then I wouldn't do it.
Well, Gaslands, it is a miniature game, sort of, but it is quite a hoot. It's really fun. And especially if you go to a game store or a convention where somebody has brought their stuff and they're just going to ask you to play. And a lot of times they have cards that they can loan. That's what happened when we went. Mm-hmm. It was 2 or 3 tables? 3 tables.
It was 3 or 4 tables.
3 or 4 tables. And the guys had everything, the people who put it on. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, we're still talking about it today, and that was over 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.